Life-changing. Check out this review on beef organs from Heart and Soil Supplements from Andreas S. Supplementing with beef organs was one of the best choices I've ever made. It allowed me to experience life in a different dimension. I can't explain how alive it made me feel and full of life, while at the same time, the most natural feeling ever. It truly enabled me to understand the value and function of organ meat, so much so that I have recently switched to an animal-based diet. And while I still supplement with the desiccated organs when I don't have access to the fresh ones, I am loving life in a different way now. Thank you, Dr. Saladino, for reintroducing me to life. Truth seekers, this is why we do it at Heart and Soil. This is why I'm so proud of this company. You can find us at heartandsoil.co. Our beef organ supplement contains heart, liver, kidney, spleen, and pancreas. What a multivitamin. That is the ultimate multivitamin. Throw away your synthetic multivitamin and get organs into your life, either fresh or desiccated. If you want desiccated, look no further. Heartandsoil.co, grass-fed, grass-finished, regeneratively raised, sourced from New Zealand, the best on the planet in glass. I'm so proud of this company. Reclaim your birthright to radical health at heartandsoil.co. Tribe, truth seekers. My guest on this podcast this week is none other than Brian Johnson, the Liver King. And yes, this is the first podcast he's done. I happen to be pretty good friends with him. I've known him for a long time, and it was awesome to sit down with him and do this show. We talked about his history. We talked about his childhood. We talked about his workouts, his food, whether he counts calories, counts macros. We talked about PEDs and steroid use. We talked about ancestral ways, where it came from. We talked about how he and I know each other. We talked about Heart and Soil. And we talked about his recent trip to Africa and Peru to meet with many indigenous cultures, the Maasai, the Hadza, and his trip to the concrete jungle of New York City. This was a really fun one. I think you're going to enjoy it. So without further ado, Brian Johnson, as you guys know, Brian Johnson is Liver King. What else can I tell you? He's really the original badass in the ancestral world. Legit beard, kicking ass, doing barbarians and barbarian training and super barbarian training every freaking week. I've stayed with this guy many times. I'm grateful to really call him a brother and basically call him family. I've had so many meals with him and his family and his sons and his amazing wife, Barbara, Liver Queen. And yeah, he's the real deal, guys. He's an amazing human, and I think he's helping a lot of people, and it's an honor to have him on the podcast. Brian Johnson, the Liver King. Dude, it's such an honor. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on, man.
Sure. I never know if I should call someone a primal or a brother, because it really depends. Are you eating liver? That's a foregone conclusion that you're my primal and my brother.
I'm honored, dude. I'm honored to be called your brother, and I'm honored to be a primal. And it's just exciting to have you on, because you've had quite a ride, man. You've influenced a lot of people really positively over the last few months. It's been a rocket ship, and I think people are going to be excited to hear more from Liver King. We get like little snippets on the stories on Instagram. We see these reels, but I'm excited to hear more of your story and to paint this deeper picture for people. Before we dive into all that, I want to start off with this, man. What have you done? It's 2:30 in the afternoon. We're recording this podcast. I'm in Costa Rica. You're in outside of Houston, Texas. What have you done today for workouts, and what have you eaten? I mean, how many bulls have you eaten? How many bull testicles have you eaten? How many barbarians have you done today? How many sleds have you pulled, and how many trucks and tires have you pulled in this day already?
Simple answer is yes. But we will have raw bull testicle for dinner. I'll tell you that. And for my morning workout, it was upper body max effort. But the important point there is I suffered for it. I struggled for it. I earned it. And on the other side of earning it, I get to enjoy the most badass post-workout meal, which I call breakfast. And it's 5 or 6 raw fertilized eggs, which are incredible. Have you ever added fish sauce to your raw eggs before?
I have not.
Oh my God. Because normally you think, okay, a raw egg, it's kind of tasteless. If you put a little bit of fish sauce in there and kind of swirl it around and taste that fish sauce, it's incredible. And then think about all the fermented goodness that you get from that rotten fish. It tastes amazing. So it's bone marrow and liver with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I had my bone marrow, I had my liver, I had my fertilized eggs, I had a whole beast protein shake, and then I always have a Liver King concoction, which is just basically a Liver King bar with some grass-finished yogurt and some maple syrup, and it was fucking delicious.
Amazing. It sounds good, dude. I wish I'd been there for breakfast.
You're invited.
I'm going to
stop making excuses.
I'm going to be there soon. Okay, 2 questions. You ever get sick from raw eggs?
Never.
Okay, me neither. Actually, that's not true. I got sick from eating raw eggs once, And it was when I was living in Seattle, and I found a dozen eggs in a friend's refrigerator, and I had no idea how long they'd been there, maybe 6 months, 8 months. And I was like in residency, and I thought, I'm going to eat these. So I ate the raw egg yolks, and I puked in the middle of the night. That's the only time I've ever gotten sick from raw eggs. And you've never gotten sick from raw eggs. Okay. So these raw
and
eggs.
I'm convinced that I'm eating salmonella or E. coli or whatever it is. Like I'm convinced that it's on there. We're just inoculated. I mean, because I'm sure you've also had a handful a day, probably for years. And it's same thing for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. I've been eating raw eggs every single day. And now when we get it from the farm, from Liver King Ranch, we don't clean them. I mean, there's poop all over them, and we just break them and we eat them. So I'm convinced we're getting exposed to it every day. We've just slowly gotten exposed to it and we can handle it now.
I think it's a great point. Every once in a while, when I eat ground beef and I eat my hamburgers, probably like you eat your hamburgers, pretty rare in the middle. Every once in a while, when I eat ground beef, I get this wave of nausea and I think, oh shit. And then it passes in like 3 or 4 minutes. And in retrospect, I think that was probably E. coli, Campylobacter, or salmonella that my body was like, what the hell is this? I get nauseous. I don't puke. I've never puked, but every once in a while I get something funky and your body just deals with it and you move on. And the same thing with eggs. I've probably eaten 15,000 raw egg yolks. That number is not hyperbole in my life. I think you've probably eaten 45,000 raw egg yolks in your life if you're doing 12 a day, Yeah. So you think that like humans are much more resilient than we've been led to believe. Don't you think so?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I always say, every once in a while I get people that are like, hey, aren't you worried about salmonella? And I'm like, Liver King worried about salmonella? Salmonella should be worried about Liver King. People worry about things in a way that they make themselves sick, right? And if it's something that exists in nature, if it's something that we've been doing for hundreds of thousands, even millions of years, we've designed a way to deal with it. And some people can say, oh, well, that way is fire. But to have the ability to create fire at will hasn't always been the case. And even today, modern day primitive culture tribes still always incorporate some raw foods, right? So we always try and do the same as well. And so I'm not convinced that you got to do everything cooked or everything raw, but I do think you should do both. And so we figured this out. When I say we figured it out, it's not like in our lifetime we figured it out, right? The species has figured this out. So yeah, I think it's a whole lot to do with nothing when people are worried about, aren't you going to get sick? It's just a social norm that what we've been fed, and people are getting themselves sick worrying about it.
And I think that there's this whole hygiene hypothesis argument on the backside saying maybe we're too clean, like maybe we should let our kids play in the dirt. Maybe we should let our kids, fall down and skin their knee. Maybe we should let our kids eat some raw meat or eat some undercooked meat or, get sick every once in a while. Maybe we're all meant to get food poisoning. It's not pleasant for anyone. I've had it in the past, but it's pretty rare every once in a while. And humans are pretty resilient. I want to know this because we talked about what you ate so far today. I want to know what you're going to eat the rest of the day. And I'm curious about your supplement use. What kind of supplements are you using? What are you going to eat the rest of the day?
Yeah, so breakfast and lunch are pretty similar. I'm having my fertilized eggs. I'm having my liver and bone marrow. I'm having my whole beast protein shake, and I'm having my Liver King concoction. Dinner's when it is good, my man. Like dinner at my house, there's no better food you can find anywhere that tastes as good or as nutritious as what I'm going to have for dinner. So let's see. It's Friday. We're going to have whole beast hamburgers. Liver Queen, she loves to grill. And so she's going to make hamburgers that are going to be made out of liver, heart, pancreas, spleen, and kidney, some muscle meat. She'll put some cheese on top with some bacon. So we're going to have a whole bunch of those. Of course, we're going to have some raw liver, some raw bone marrow with that. And then she'll have something raw, another organ that's raw, like raw heart or raw testicle. And then we'll have a bowl of carbs, probably some tubers or some rice. But today it's probably going to be tubers. This is dinner. And then in terms of supplements, I just think it's really important because I think a lot of times people will see somebody who looks like they got a decent physique and they want to know, what supplements do you take? What they're really asking is, what shortcuts can I take? Right. And that's the wrong question. It's, what are you doing? What are the fundamental things that I need to be doing that I'm missing before I go take these shortcuts? Because if you don't have your macros, if you don't have the right amount of protein, carbs, and fat, and if you're not getting that from the right sources, no supplement matters, right? The supplemental stuff doesn't matter. So I just think it's so important to make sure that you have your all your macros dialed in. I'm not a huge fan of, I don't count calories. So if I'm getting less ripped, I lay off the maple syrup. If I'm getting less swole, I lay on the maple syrup. So I actually use carbs or the maple syrup as a lever to really influence body composition. So other than that, almost everything just stays the same for me. So it's just a matter of if I'm getting less ripped, I'm really going to decrease my carbs quite a bit. And so even though I'm sort of oversimplifying it by saying I'm going to cut out the maple syrup, I also am cutting out a lot of the carbs. I'm cutting out the potatoes. I don't know if you've ever seen me hold the sacrifice bowl, but I always say these are the carbs that I earned, but I'm not going to have. And so this is why I call it a sacrifice, because I know over time what's going to happen as a result of that. And so for me, I've never counted calories. I'm not going to count calories. What I'm doing is working. And I'm sure that you know that, food is so much more important than calories. It's information, right? It's cell signaling. And so it's so much. So people that start counting calories, I'm like, if you live the 9 ancestral tenets, you'll optimize hormones in a way that it's almost like the calories start to take care of themselves. Your body knows what to do with this stuff when you're living all 9 ancestral tenets. So, in terms of what I have for dinner, I think I answered that. And then you also asked if I count calories, right?
Yeah. I just was curious. Do you have a sense of your macros? I mean,
It's whatever exists in nature, really, right? It's like it's if whatever the cow is. If the cow's 20% fat, that's pretty much it. Because if you look at the carbs that I have are it's a fraction of the percent of calories that I consume. It's I mean, and normally I don't blood test, but I bet I'm ketogenic most of the time. So if I'm having whatever meat that I'm having, it's not like we say, well, let's get a low fat meal. I mean, if anything, we're adding fat to it. We're adding the bone marrow to it. So whatever exists in nature, I would say is pretty much what it is. Because if you look at the amount of carbs that I have, I bet I don't have more. If you think about it, I hardly have any carbs with breakfast and lunch, and then I'm having some carbs, some maple syrup, and some potatoes with dinner. But I mean, it can't be more than 5 or 10% of my daily caloric values.
Okay. And then supplements, I guess you said it's the wrong question, but anything else that you're using in the day?
Well, here's the thing. I do think that it really is important to know if you ever see me travel, I always have desiccated liver and beef organs. Mm-hmm. So anywhere I go, if I'm traveling or if I'm vacation, those are always in my bag. Liver Queen brings them all for her. She brings them for Striker and Rad. We don't go a day without eating that stuff. And so sometimes it really is just out of convenience. So again, if you can get the real deal, do it. But whenever I'm traveling, I always bring desiccated liver, desiccated bone marrow, and then Liver Queen brings the whole gamut. She brings the thymus, she brings kidney. I mean, you should see her. She has like a whole backpack full of that. So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of supplements.
So I think when people see someone with your physique, they look at it and they think there's something going on here. There's gear, there's steroids, there's performance enhancing drugs. And I'll add my flavor to it. When I see people ask this question, I think, if you could do, 1/10, or if you worked out 1/10 as hard as Liver King, then you could ask him this question. I've lived with you. I've spent time with you, and I've never seen anybody live the ancestral message as richly and deeply and truly as you do. But I want to give you the chance to answer it, because I know a lot of people are going to be curious on this podcast. Talk to us about, whether you use performance enhancing drugs or steroids or anything to get this physique.
Listen, I love this question. I've been getting this question since high school, and it's done more to lift the Liver King brand and message than any other question. So I hope you asking it now continues to do the same. The short answer is no. I don't touch the stuff. But here's the deal. Isn't it just fucked up that a muscular, lean man has to justify his level of fitness, but a fat, lazy, metabolically deranged, or a skinny, fragile, osteopathically deranged, they don't have to justify their lack of fitness? I think I alluded to this earlier. If you sleep like shit, which almost everybody does, you're going to tank your hormones, the favorable hormone, not all hormones, right? Because your cortisol is probably high, but you're going to tank the hormones that build muscle and burn fat. If you eat like shit, you're going to tank your hormones. If you move like shit and don't lift heavy shit, you're going to tank your hormones. If you shield like shit, like I said earlier, if you keep your cell phone next to your dick and balls, what does that do to you? If you're wearing petrochemicals, if you're wearing perfumes, you're going to tank your hormones. And those are just 4 of the 9 ancestral tenets. I know I said this earlier, but I'm going to say it again. The ancestral man has a much more favorable hormone profile than the modern day manicured man. And there's a lot of research to show that. Just 30 years ago, we had double the testosterone. What was it 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 10,000 years ago, right? I can only imagine how high that testosterone was. What did that growth hormone look like? if you embrace and live all 9 ancestral tenets, if you stop making excuses, if you commit to earning it, if you have 2 blood-burning workouts, you're going to be able to express your highest and most dominant form. I don't know if you're going to look like Liver King, but you've already lost if this is what you want. If you're comparing yourself to another person, this is the finite game. The infinite game is your infinite possibility, right? If you want to live your best life, your infinite life, if you want to become anything, even a king, it's all 9 ancestral tenets, and you can express anything.
I love it, dude. You know, it's so funny. I got accused of using steroids in Costa Rica the other day. And I
actually even saw on Instagram, somebody said that you were using steroids.
Yeah. It's totally true. Like that a fit, reasonably muscular man, I'm not as muscular as you, but a fit, muscular man gets accused of using steroids today. You know, I mean, I think the vegans look at me and they think he's on steroids, you know, like these sarcopenic, you know, muscular deficient vegans, because they're not eating enough protein, they're not eating enough animal protein, their hormones are probably jacked from all the things they're doing and the nutrient deficiencies, et cetera. There's a litany of nutrients we could talk about. They're not deficient on a vegan diet. They look at someone like me who's not as muscular as you and they say that guy's using steroids. So you're right. I think that in today's culture, if you are a fit, lean man, people assume that you're taking shortcuts and they assume you're using PEDs or something. It's crazy. Yeah, it happened to me here in Costa Rica.
I'll tell you what I know. I look a whole lot more like an ancestral man than what the modern day man looks like in terms of physique. When I was with the Hadza, there was one guy there, their main hunter, who was way more vascular than me. And we did a bicep pose next to each other, and his bicep was more muscular than my bicep. I mean, it's if you live this way, and this guy has no mechanical loading the way that I structure my mechanical loading. You put this guy in a gym, this Hadza, this wild bushman in a gym. I mean, everybody would accuse this guy, you know, of being on some sort of PED. So to me, it's nothing more than a compliment, really. It's an opportunity to talk about the 9 ancestral tenets. And it's those 9 ancestral tenets, again, that's going to optimize our hormones, that's going to put us in the right direction so that most people would probably need to do some sort of exogenous drugs in order to achieve what they can achieve by living an ancestral lifestyle. So anyways, those are my thoughts on it. And you know, I'll never forget when Derek from More Plates, More Dates did some podcast or a video on it. And I loved it. Like Liver Queen and I were like, oh my God, people actually think this? And then look at all the people that he's introduced to the ancestral message. Right. So, you know, I'd never get tired of hearing it, but I've always said, like, I don't want to spend more than 5 or 10 minutes talking about it because Liver King stands for so much more, right? The 9 ancestral tenets. I don't bottle, teach, or preach this other message, and I don't want to be associated with a question. I'll answer the question, but it's like, okay, I'll give it 5 or 10 minutes. We'll get in and we'll get out. But this is about the 9 ancestral tenets.
And I think it's important for people to realize that, like you said, I appreciate the point that you made that, you know, not necessarily by the fault of ours, but we find ourselves in a way of living today that's not very ancestrally consistent. And that's having effects on both men and women's hormones. I mean, Shanna Swan was on Joe Rogan, you know, last year and talked about declining testosterone in men. We're seeing penises shrinking. We're seeing sperm count shrinking. The taint, the anogenital distance is shrinking. There's no question that hormonally we are becoming a shadow of ourselves, both men and women. I think a lot of men are going to listen to this and think about testosterone, but testosterone is important for women too. And women are going to suffer in the same ways as men if they're not, I think, embracing the same principles. They're going to have hormonal derangement. They're not going to be able to achieve as much of their potential as they really could. So it's a critical message that we're being sold a bill of goods today. You know, we're being tempted to trade a higher potential for convenience and comfort. And I think it's a Faustian bargain. And I appreciate their calling attention to it too, man.
Yeah. Whoever said work smarter, not harder, like they got you. They got you real good, you know, and now those people are selling you status. You go to the mall and you buy your status, right? And this isn't real happiness, right? Somebody, though, said that, and people are actually believing it. And then people are really just enjoying being comfortable. But you already know these guys are really suffering. So again, this is why we're doing what we're doing. This is why we're bringing light to this message.
I love it, dude. I love it. Now, I was going to ask you about this later in the podcast. This is a perfect segue. Let's talk about your recent trip to Africa, man. Tell me about the tribes you were with there, because I saw on your Instagram stories, I was so jealous because I never got to drink blood with the Maasai. That blood looks so good. What does blood taste like, brother?
It tastes like strength. It tastes like courage. It tastes like all things fucking manly. When we were with the Machiganga in the Amazon, they were incredible. We went on a hunt immediately. We were out on a hunt with them for about 6 hours. We were unsuccessful, but it was sort of like a casual hunt. And we had several opportunities to take a monkey, but every time it was missed. And we didn't have blood that day. And I really couldn't wait to drink some blood because they also this is one of the favorite things that they consume is blood. So when we went to Africa, I was like set on this trajectory. I couldn't wait to do what you did, which was hunt with a Hadza and drink blood with the Maasai. How cool is that, right? And so as soon as we got to visit with the Maasai, they had blood waiting for us. And so they poured us all in glass cups. They poured us blood in these glass cups. And I think the blood tastes a whole lot like whatever the animal was consuming because we drank blood probably 5 or 6 different times and it tasted 5 or 6 different ways. Sometimes we'll drink blood out when we take a cow at Liver King Ranch. And there's a certain taste to it. What I would say is every time I've had blood at Liver King Ranch, it tastes a lot like bone broth, like warm bone broth. And it's delicious. And my young guy wants more. He says, "Can I have more?" It definitely didn't taste like warm bone broth here. And I'll tell you, there was even one tribe, a clan of the Maasai, that was a little bit more closer to a road. And this blood did not taste very good at all. The cows didn't look nearly as healthy. And I'll tell you, this blood, it tasted like shit. Literally, it tasted like shit. So it tastes different. And so I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I would say the first time I had it and recurrently over at Liver King Ranch, it tastes like bone broth.
When I had turkey blood, so the only blood that I've had fresh is turkey blood. I went to Rome Ranch here in Texas. I want to take you out there sometime. And I was able to harvest my own turkey. I got to select a turkey and then kill the turkey with a bolt gun, which is a very humane way to kill the turkey for Thanksgiving. When I did that, I cut this throat and I collected the blood and I drank the blood and it was very sweet. It was really good. I thought it was delicious and people were super grossed out and making barfy faces and people were all freaking out on my Instagram. And I thought, wow, you guys are missing out. Blood is some of the best stuff I've ever had in my life. It's so good.
Yeah. Bill Schindler had described it sort of tasting like a chocolate milk, a little irony, a little salty. And I even mixed the first serving of blood I had at Liver King Ranch. I want it to taste like that. I mixed it with one of our dairy cows' raw milk and the blood. And I was like, this tastes nothing like what Bill said it was going to taste like. But I'll say it was still delicious. I prefer it way just blood itself versus mixing it with the raw milk. But every time I think it's tasted drastically different. Yeah.
So interesting. So just so people understand this, you spent more time with the Maasai when you were in Africa than I did. I spent most of my time with the Hadza. They're pretty much pastoralists now. Describe what it was like living with the Maasai, because you really enjoyed the Maasai. You told me you felt like they were a very regal people. But how do they live on a day-to-day basis? Elaborate this. Tell the story for people, like what the Maasai are doing these days.
I think my favorite thing about them is they basically eat 3 things. They eat meat, milk, and blood. Meat, milk, and blood. How cool is this? For about 3 days, they'll subsist on milk and blood, which are renewable resources, because for people that don't know, it's not like they kill the animal, slaughter the animal, and then collect the blood. They're harvesting the blood from the carotid. They patch it up and they let that animal go about its life. And so it's milk and blood for about 3 days. And then for the next 3 or 4 days, they'll butcher an animal. So we took a lamb. When we slaughtered the lamb, we did drink the blood as well. But this was really cool. I was expecting and hoping that liver would come first. It was the kidney that came first.
Really?
And you've never had kidney like this. Oh my God. This kidney was sweet, kind of had a nutty taste, and it was beyond tender. You're thinking it's going to taste like piss. I'm sure you've had kidney that tastes horrible, right? This was incredible. Like I said, it had this nutty taste to it. And when it all disappeared, I wanted more. And so the kidney was incredible. Heart was probably in the top 2 or 3 things there. But as soon as they butchered the animal, we had all the organs raw. And then it was like, okay, so now what's left over? Now you have the muscle meat. And so now they went and cooked it, put it over fire. And then we had some muscle meat. We were pretty full by the time it was, to eat the muscle meat. But that's such a cool thing that they can do. I know that you know this with the Hadza. They wake up and they're on a mission. It's like they need to hunt. They need to be successful. And if they don't eat, they die. The Maasai don't have that concern. The Maasai know they have thousands of animals that belong to them. They can drink the milk or the blood, and they're going to be just fine, right? They can harvest one of these. They're going to be just, there's a certain contentness, a certain sort of fulfillment that they just sort of casually meander about that day. And they're relaxed, and that relaxes you. Man, and I know that you know this about the Hadza, the intensity that they have, these wild Bushmen. You can't be more wild than this, right? At first, they were not welcoming at all for us. They were like, "Who are you? What do you want to do here?" I mean, it was just like a locker room. These guys didn't really want us there, and they were going to go out and about and do their thing. And but you could just tell the intensity that they have. And then when it came time for the hunt, man, they didn't give a shit about us. I mean, they took off, and I know that you saw this as well, but they're beyond one mind, right? It's like the instinct that they have, the chemistry, the culture on a hunt with a Hadza. If any professional team had that kind of chemistry, they would win a Super Bowl, World Series every single year. I don't think anybody's experienced this sort of electricity with a group before. But again, you got to remember, it's not like they're just trying to go out and win a Super Bowl. Their lives depend on this success. So being with the Maasai seemed to be relaxing and peaceful. And you got to see sort of like, I don't want to call it royalty, but it's almost like if these guys have thought long and hard about tomorrow and next month and next year. I mean, these guys are really planning this visionary future. And you know this, the Hadza only really give a shit about today. I mean, did they ever save food when you were hunting with them?
They never got anything big enough. It was all small game when I was with them, a baboon, a genet cat, a dik-dik, which is like a small deer. They didn't get enough food because their lands are being encroached upon. You probably saw that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, they just devoured everything. And I think they maybe could have saved some for the next day. But it's like, I love this about them. It's like they devoured the day and they're laughing and they're just immersed in the moment, not giving a shit about tomorrow. And then they bring you in that too. And now you have this kind of intensity and electricity along with them. Very different tribal experiences. But across the Machaganga, the Chaga, the Maasai, and the Hadza, and the Datoga, everybody prioritized the animal. And when I would ask questions about what makes you happy, I'm sure you've heard this too. It's when we're successful with a hunt, with the Maasai, when it's been raining, because their animals are healthy, because they have access now to healthy animals that they can feed off the blood, milk, and meat. And what makes you sad is when it hasn't been raining, when we haven't had a successful hunt, it's like everything is anchored around the animal. And I know you and I talked about this offline. I did not see a single fruit eaten. I did see some jungle potatoes, but it was always meat. It was always the animal. It was always the whole beast. And it was always, there were some tubers, and there was some honey, but we didn't even see fruit or not one vegetable in the whole time with the Machaganga in the Amazon or the tribes in Africa.
No leaves, no stems, no seeds, really. It's so rare. The Hadza didn't touch a single leaf when I was there. They didn't eat a single seed. When you were with the Hadza, did you go to the baobab tree and try the baobab fruit?
In those trees, but we didn't try the fruit. But they do eat those fruits, don't they?
They do. They're like kind of hard to describe. They're like citrus cotton candy. Maybe they're like a dry fruit. They would eat them occasionally, but I think they found it more interesting to throw stones at the tree to knock the fruits down for us and then give them to us. I mean, there's tons of fruit in these trees outside of their camp, and they weren't really bothered about it. They'd go eat them occasionally if they were bored, but they really got excited about the honey. I saw the video of you online. It looked like you stuck your hand into a hive of stinging bees.
That's right. Their best hunter continued to challenge me. And they didn't challenge anybody else. They just continued to challenge me. And, I always teach and preach this to my kids. Your knee-jerk reaction should be, go do it, right? You don't want to ever regret not doing something. So your knee-jerk reaction should be, go and do it. And so this is what I did. And I had no idea what was going to happen. And I did get bitten by some bees, but it was worth every second doing it. I want to just take one step back. I did see the Hadza picking some plants. And I said, here we go. Here we go. Let's expand upon these tenets. Let's expand, and it was for medicinal purpose. One of their tribesmen had some stomach issues. And so I think that's really interesting. Everybody knows which trees, which plants to go to for medicinal reasons, but nobody's going to that for food, for calories, for energy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think of it the same way. Like that was what I saw with the Hadza also. The plants were most of the plant parts, the stems, the seeds, the leaves were medicine, not necessarily food. They're only going to eat that stuff unless they're starving. Okay. How was the honey? Because when I had the honey in Tanzania, it was pretty good. I saw you eating like the same honey. Tell me about the honey.
It was unbelievable. The first thing that they gave me was really just comb with larvae in it.
Yes.
And there's kind of it's a little bit bitter. It's not a little, it's pretty fucking bitter. But then you have that sweet, succulent honey. What you really want to do is have a bite of the larvae and then have a bite of that sweet honey. You've never had honey like this. You have. But I would say for anyone who's hearing this, you've never had honey that tastes like this before. Yeah. So, and my youngest, Brad, couldn't wait for more. He just kept asking for honey. He just wanted more, more honey. And it's real interesting to see how the guys that collected the honey, they got first dibs on it. And it was the same. I don't know if you saw the same thing, but the guys that were successful with the hunt, they got first dibs on what they would collect and what they would share from the animals. So this was really interesting. And of course, they shared everything. But to see how they were so excited about that honey. And rightfully so, because man, that is delicious.
It's really good. And that's the only time I've ever eaten that many bugs, that many larvae, but it's all packed in there with the honey and it's like these white larvae and mushy. And you're like, oh, well, just do it. But it was good. It was very memorable for me too. And I'm glad I did it. And it was delicious. There's gotta be some unique nutrition in those things. But okay, to sum up, we had these, what's the tribe in Peru called?
Machagenga,
the Maasai, the Datoga, the Chaga, and the Hadza. Throughout all of them, there's really no vegetables. Not a lot of fruit between many of them, which is surprising. There were some berries when I was in Tanzania with the Hadza, but that was about it. And not a lot of seeds, not a lot of leaves. They definitely celebrate the animal. They're eating all the organs. The Maasai were eating the organs raw, which is amazing. The best kidney you've ever had. I need to eat some kidney with the Maasai because the kidney I've had sometimes is like a little bit pea tasting. And then the Hadza cooked the organs. Did they cook the organs when you were with them?
They laid they were mountain hyrexes, or they pronounce it ibexes or hyrexes. And there's like they look like rodents, but they're mammals. There's like about 15 pounds. They just laid it in the fire.
Yep.
But they started to take the organs out well before they were cooked. And you know what? The first thing that we ate were the feet. He gave me a foot, and I'm thinking, what the fuck am I going to do with this thing? Because it had the claws and everything. But I saw him eating it, so I'm like, I got to eat this thing too. And I think it was another challenge. Like, I can't tell. I mean, he gave me the head. And I'm thinking, fuck, what am I going to do with his head? Thank God he took it from me and he showed me how to gnaw the back of the cranium out to access the. But I was like, oh, I got this now. But they started with the foot and the bones, and it tasted like little pretzels. And when it's seasoned on the ash of the fire, it's incredible. It was incredible. So that was the first thing. But then it was the liver. And we sliced up the liver, several different pieces to share with everybody. But then it was the lung and the heart. And you know, I don't know if you've had lung before, but eating raw lung is terrible. It's just like eating a sponge. On this little rodent, it was fine. You could eat it. It wasn't like a marshmallow or anything. It was just, there was no air in it. It was completely fine to eat. So I would say that a lot of the organs were still pretty raw, and they might put it on the ash just for a second. But it was, if it wasn't raw, it was really rare.
Amazing. Now I saw a video, I think it was on TikTok or Instagram, of you with a couple of the Hadza guys. And one of the guys I recognized, like if I went back, that guy would recognize me. So there was one guy I recognized and one guy I didn't. It was the same tribe. I know the chief. I saw you with the chief and I was like, oh, I know that guy. And they were just talking to you and speaking in Hadzabe or Hadzane. And one of the guys was playing with your beard. What did the Hadza think of your beard? Like, I'm just curious, you know, Liver King Brian Johnson walks in, like, you're a lot more muscular than most of the Hadza. We can talk about this. Like, what was their reaction? Like, whoa, like,
you know what? It seemed that, I think because they saw someone who looked different, that they also wanted to challenge me. And so at first they gave me a bow to pull back, and I couldn't pull it back all the way. And now they're laughing together. Oh, this is real funny, right? And I said, give me that other bow. And I took someone else's bow. And anyways, you know what? Nobody has a beard, right? Like the Maasai don't have beard, the Hadza don't have beard, the Machiganga don't have beard. And so this was really, I don't know how this is going to come off sharing this, but the chief of the Hadza called me a lion. He said, you look like a lion. Now let's see if you behave like a lion. The Maasai said the same thing. Said the same thing. So I'm thinking, wow, this is actually serving me pretty well. But I think what ends up happening, probably similar to you, is there's a lot of outsiders that come in that don't embrace their ways. They're not going to eat or drink the blood or the raw milk or consume the whole animal the way that they're doing it. And so I think when you're doing it that way, they start to embrace you and they start to call you one of their own. And when they call you Maasai, when they call you Hadza, there's no greater compliment than that. But they were pulling at the beard. One guy brought out a machete and tried to fucking cut my beard. And this is true. And I cut my beard with a machete anyway. So I said, go ahead, you could fucking help me trim it. But I think we just had fun with it. Half the time they were pulling my beard around and I kind of want to be like, if this happened here, be like, do not fucking touch, do not come that close to me.
Do not touch Liver King's beard.
Yeah, but these guys are great, right? They're just curious. They're like, what is this thing? And I tell them this is where I get my powers from. This and liver.
It's biblical, man. It's like Samson. You got like you can't cut the beard. This is the Liver King's power beard. If anybody in New York had tried to touch your beard, it wouldn't have gone the same way, right?
Hell no. Do not try. I'm going on. Do not try and touch this guy's beard.
Amazing, man. Thank you for sharing that. I was so stoked that you got to visit those tribes because it brought back so many good memories to see your stories on Instagram and stuff. And I'm sure it sounds like an incredible experience. And it's such an interesting thing to think about, the fact that in modern life, I mean, you just got back from New York too. I want to talk to you about that one a little later, but we live lives that are so different than our ancestors. We live lives that are so different than people have for hundreds of thousands of years, for millions of years. I know a lot of people listening to this have probably put a lot of this into respective timeframes and can understand that the last 2,000 to 3,000 years of quote unquote modernity and civilization and this Western civilizations are just a blink of an eye. But for the majority of our lives, we lived much more like the Hadza, partially kind of like the Maasai too, and we lived off the land and we cared about the success of a hunt and the weather. That was basically what we cared about. And maybe the safety of our children and the safety of our tribe. And, whether we were in good relations with other tribes, and we celebrated successful hunts. We celebrated bounty and food. And that was about it. And we celebrated life another day, and we celebrated good weather, whether that was rain to give water in the aquifers for the cows or green grass for the cows to graze on, or, whatever, drinking water for the tribes. And it's so different, the things we get wrapped up in now. Did you ever ask the Hadza what they do when somebody dies?
I don't remember if it was the Hadza or the Maasai, but apparently one of the groups is concerned about the hyenas eating them, right? That they turn into hyenas. I don't remember which if that was Maasai or the Hadza. What happens with the Hadza?
The Hadza, it's just so funny because you mentioned earlier that the Hadza kind of live for the day, and they're very present focused, which is great. And I think that they are. If you ask them what they do when you die, they say, oh, we leave your body and we move camp. But that's it. They don't like, oh, no. What do you think? What happens to the human form after you die? They're like, oh, the animals eat you. They have no concept of like an afterlife, or they have no real cosmology. We tried to get a sense of their cosmology. We couldn't really get it out of them. I wish I'd spent more time with them at night because I would have liked to look at the stars with the Hadza, but we always left quickly after it got dark. There's some sort of regulations in Tanzania. You're not allowed to sleep in the camp, but I would be curious when we go back. Hopefully you and I will get to go back together at some point. And shoot some Hadza bows and hunt with the Hadza, or maybe drink some blood together there. I want to ask the Hadza and the Maasai, like, what do you think of it? Like, what is a star? What is up in the heaven? Like, what is this? It would be so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what the big takeaway is? I've never met a group of people that are kicking this much ass at life, that are this happy, right? That are this content and this fulfilled, and they seemingly have nothing, right? They have no material possessions. There's no way to really repay them. Right. We tried to bring them some food, and we brought some hard-boiled eggs, and they didn't know how to access the eggs. And so we try to show them how to peel the eggs. And I don't know if you saw this as well with water. They don't know how to open the water. They use the machete to take the top of the water off. The point is, they seemingly have no material possessions. They're the happiest people I've ever met. And this isn't just the Hadza or the Maasai. This transcends all primitive cultures that we've seen, the Chaga, the Datoga, the Machigenga. They are the happiest, most fulfilled. There was a time that my cameraman got hit by an arrow, broadside of the arrow, when they shot straight up at a monkey. A few seconds later, that arrow came right down and the broadside of it struck him in the chest. It did get punctured. They thought it was the funniest thing they've ever fucking seen. They laughed for 10 minutes, and it reminded me of what it might be like in war when you have that close of a call. What else is there, right? Like, these are your brothers. And now, like, what else are you going to do? They just laughed. I've never heard a group of people laugh so hard, but this is the most special thing, right? Is like, we seemingly have it all. We have all the comforts, but we have all the crisis, that comes with that. And I've just never met, like, there's something to take away, from this ancestral way of being.
So much. It's so deep, man. I mean, it's so much to reflect on. And I'm just thinking personally, and we don't have to talk about this much online, but, I'm thinking all the crisis, that you and I deal with on a daily basis. And my Instagram just got deleted and I'm all stressed. Like, oh, my Instagram got deleted. I'm thinking, what the fuck, Paul? I care about it because I want to use Instagram to promote the message and get people to better health and help them learn this. But at the same time, I'm thinking, what would the Hadza think? Like, who the heck cares if your Instagram got deleted, man? You have a place to sleep, you have food, you're here talking to your brother. It's just, it brings it into perspective for me in the moment, because that's what I'm dealing with. Before I came on the podcast with you, I was just with 100 primals, 100 really truth seekers who came to Santa Teresa, Costa Rica for this animal-based gathering. And that really filled me up. That was really great. And in the back of my mind, I'm still stressed. Like, what the heck's happening with my Instagram and all this kind of stuff. But it does help really put it in perspective. It's great to reflect on that. It's so important. Let's shift a little bit here. I am curious about this, man. You've talked a little bit about your childhood and your social media, but I think people would love to hear about this. Like, when did you first start lifting weights? When did you first understand the importance of an ancestral lifestyle? I mean, I don't actually know a lot of his story, and I'm imagining 6-year-old Brian Johnson, Liver King, with a 6-year-old beard, and he's bench pressing, and there's like a 6-year-old Barbarian, Liver King, and he's, pulling weights through the lake as 7 years old. I'm just, paint the picture for me, man. Like, when did this all start? What's the genesis of Brian Johnson, Liver King?
It's everything you just said, actually. I was born out of the womb with the beard, doing Barbarian and all that stuff. But, really, man, most of my adolescent years was just a living fucking hell. I would say from about 10 to 14, I was undersized. I was the only one of my kind at school. I felt so embarrassed and humiliated. I had zero self-worth. And I just got the shit kicked out of me almost every single day, Monday through Friday. I couldn't wait for the weekend. I had no friends, and I didn't have a dad to coach me or mentor me to a better life. What I did have is access to a bench and a set of weights. My mom had this boyfriend who said, you can use my bench and weights. And I just started going to town every single day. I did bench and curls. And then I started to learn how to do cleans, and I started to learn how to do other things. And I would say by about 12 or 13, I started to get strong. And I started to see development. I started to see value and worth and esteem in myself. And part of that's because of the way other people saw me then. I had peers that would say, dude, what are you doing? Or you look like this other guy. And I had girls finally pay attention to me for the first time ever. And I realized I actually have some control over my self-worth, over the value that I present to the world. And so I would say, like, this was really my rite of passage. At around 13, 14, I got strong. And it took years of doing this, but I saw the slow progression and I got strong and I figured my way out of that situation. And if you can figure your way out of that, that's a rite of passage. That's forged me, my character, as an evolutionary hunter for the rest of my life. And you hear this cliche, but it's not really a cliche, that hard times make strong men. Man, those times, I'm telling you, it was a living hell for me. And I think this is what's missing today, is there's no requirement for hard times today. Right? There's no requirement for that because we have 24/7 comforts. And if you have an issue like that, what happened when I went to school, there's no way anyone's allowing this stuff to happen now. So I would say that this was really probably one of the most important things that have happened in my life. I'm so grateful that it happened. I remember all the guys' names that kicked the shit out of me, their first name, their last name. And I'm so grateful for them because it allowed me to go through that time and create that rite of passage for myself. And I try and share this with people. I think it falls squarely on parents to make sure that the upbringing with kids, it's tough. They earn it. They know hard times. But if a parent doesn't instill that in you, you can create that for yourself, right? I don't care how old you are. You can still create your own self-worth, your own esteem, and you can become anything, even a king. So this is something that I think was probably one of the most important things that shaped my life. The next huge thing that happened in my life was really my kids not doing well. So once I have kids, they're allergic to everything. I mean, they're allergic to their dog. They're getting hives. They're throwing up, like projectile vomiting, with stuff. They went to the hospital multiple times because they stopped breathing. And at this point, I'm mid 20s. And I'm thinking, like, my wife and I are kicking ass. We look pretty good. We feel pretty good. They're going to eat the way that we eat. And we think we're eating pretty good. But, now our kids can't go anywhere without an EpiPen and Benadryl. And every time we go see a new doctor, we say, this is what's going on. We got to fix this. And it's the same bullshit advice. It's more Benadryl. It's another EpiPen. And everywhere you go, you got to be cognizant of that. You got to be worried what's going to happen. And so, man, we just kept looking for solutions. And finally, I found a solution that resonated. And it was this whole ancestral living thing. So we started by really cutting out all the processed foods, the seed oils, all the liquid calories. We brought in wild caught, organic, nose to tail foods, chiefly liver and bone marrow. And we sort of did a GAPS introduction. Here's the thing. When your kids don't eat for a week, they will eat anything, because we're thinking, oh my God, how are we going to get them to eat this stuff, right? That once they're starving, they love liver, they love bone marrow. And don't get me wrong, her parents wanted to call CPS. Her parents, really had her questioning, are we doing the right thing? Because this is tough. This is probably the most important thing we've ever done in our lives to get away from the way they were eating and introduce these types of foods. Literally, I would say once they started eating this way, within about 1 or 2 days, we got their lives back. The rings around their eyes went away. Their skin tone came back. Their vibrancy, came back. It was a vibrancy we never knew that they even had. The way that they were thinking, the way that they were acting, it's like we had a dulled version of them this whole time. And so once we saw what this lever could do, it was like, oh my God, how far can we optimize this? So we started learning about all the other ancestral ways, no longer out of medical necessity, but now out of like first principles thinking, what kind of things shaped us to become ultimately who we are today. And then when we figured out that we could get our kids healthy, really healthy, the way they were suffering and struggling, we decided, you know what, we got to share this with the world. It becomes a responsibility and obligation to now share this with the world. And I know you know this, but when people ask me, okay, what do you do now? I always tell them I'm the CEO of the ancestral lifestyle, right? Because too many people are suffering and struggling with depression, anxiety, autoimmune, infertility, low energy, low libido, and low ambition in life, right? And there's a simple, elegant solution that costs virtually nothing. Most of the ancestral tenets are free, and if you stop eating the processed crap and you start eating healthy, nose to tail stuff, you'll see it's either going to be a wash. I just tell people you can't afford not to eat this way, right? Because you're going to realize a new level of life that's goddamn worth living. And so it's up to us to model, teach, and preach that now. So I think when you realize how that can change and transform your kid's life, and you see that that's it's something that you've seen right in front of you. I think you're a piece of shit if you know that and you don't go teach that to the world. So this is what we do now, right? This is our vision, is to make sure that this ancestral message goes mainstream. And whether people execute it on it or not, that's up to them. But it's up to us to make sure that the world knows that there's this simple way of being, and this can transform and change your life tomorrow.
Well said, dude. Well said. So at this point in your life, in your early 20s, were you and your wife, Barbara, were you guys eating like junk food? Were you guys eating kind of processed food? You didn't like, what was your diet? Has your diet always been bull testicle, brother?
No way. No way. I'll never forget when we first ate our bull testicle, though, because the first one didn't taste nearly as good as they do now. I think that you start to sort of develop a palate and you know what you really need with it. You know what? It was like the whole bodybuilder craze of like lean meats and carbs. This is what we did. Skim milk, chicken breast, brown rice, potato. I mean, this is what we did, but basically nonstop. We didn't have the fat that we needed. And again, I think you're a lot more robust, obviously, when you're younger. If you're doing most of the 9 ancestral tenets right, if you're sleeping right, if you're moving right, if you're connecting right, if you're bonding right, if you're shielding right, I think you're pretty damn biologically robust, and you don't necessarily have to eat perfectly. We were performing what we thought was pretty decently. And so this is the way that we were eating. We weren't eating, well, and you know what? I take it back. Some stuff we would get from Whole Foods, and we're like, oh, if it's from Whole Foods, it's got to be okay, right? And the kids would eat this Amy's Pizza. I don't know if you've ever heard of that brand.
Oh,
I don't know,
I know.
why it's like stuck in my head. Oh, it's healthy. It's from Whole Foods, you know? Oh, and we're going to have some of that too. And this was ridiculous because Rad would say, I'm going to have this for dinner. And then Stryker would say, and I'll have this for dinner. And then they're eating two different things. You know, Liver Queen and I are eating like the same thing, but there's three things that are prepared. You know, once we did this ultimate reset and they stopped eating for a week, and then we introduced this ancestral way of eating, there's no more, what do you have? What would you like for dinner? Right? It's like, here's what we're having. So I would say that if you look back at what we were eating, I would say we were missing probably the most important thing, which was the fat, the real good, nourishing fat. But it didn't really strike us or affect us in such a debilitating way. We didn't have to make a radical change in our lives because of some medical necessity like we did with our kids. So we incorporated that. We learned the value of it. And I'll tell you, you know, I'm double the age now, and I'm more than double kicking the fucking ass of you put me up against the guy from my mid-20s. You know, now I'm Liver King. That guy was Brian Johnson. You know, Liver King will crush Brian Johnson. You know, I wish that I had guidance and I knew about these things earlier on. And again, like now that we know these things, well, of course, you know, we got to make sure that we teach and preach these things. The world needs to hear this roar. And if we can do that, I think we're doing a decent job.
I remember you telling me the story of this time in your life when we first met. And you described both Stryker and Rad just laid out on your graph. They're just like completely, they were so tired because I think this is the way to do it. I don't have kids, but, and I think that this, you know, pushes a lot of people's buttons. They would say, oh, you can't, you're starving your kids. It's like, no, there's plenty of good food for them to eat. They're just not choosing to eat it because they're so addicted to the junk food. And it's your kids basically revolted, right? They didn't eat for a week because they chose not to eat the good food. That's what happened, right? And they were just like so tired. And eventually their brains were like, we have to eat. It was like you guys gave them an ultimatum and you said, no more junk food. This is what you're eating. And it was all the good food with the fats and the meats and the organs, nose to tail. And they said, heck no. And you said, well, we'll see who breaks first, right? Is that kind of how it went?
Much, but we got rid of all the food, right? All the processed crap, right? Like that's gone. There's no option, right? So we knew it was a matter of time. And I can't tell you how many times we would put some bone broth with some liver inside of it. Maybe there's a few other things in the bone broth, and they wouldn't touch it. And it's like, okay, guess what? You're seeing that for the next meal and the next meal. And so, sure, over a couple of days, I mean, they were starving, and then they would have a bite, and they loved it, you know. And now they think it's the best thing ever, you know. And now I think if you put liver in front of them, they wouldn't say they love it. They don't dislike it. It's just that they know that liver and bone marrow comes first. They know that nose to tail stuff comes first, and then they get to eat some more stuff that they really enjoy. But back then, there was just no option. Like it wasn't in the house. We weren't going anywhere. And so I knew we weren't giving it. I remember one time Barbara said to me, she's like, do you think we're doing the right thing? You know, it's been this many days. They're not eating. They're like zombies. They're acting like they have the flu. Do you think we're doing? And the truth is I wasn't real sure, but I knew I had to be ultra sure for her. And I said, we're absolutely doing the right thing. Look at how many times they stopped breathing. Look at how many times we've had to use the EpiPen. Look at how many ambulances have come to take our kids from us because we could lose them. And now we have an opportunity to reset that. We get a redo. And thank God we did what we did, you know, because the way that they are now, man, I mean, you already know this. They're kicking ass in life. And so this is one of the most important things we could have done. And I want to share that message with the world because there's so much opportunity, you know, for kids to have a decent chance at life and to really kick ass at life.
I think it's so impressive when I'm at your house and Rad, your youngest son, just does a CrossFit workout on his own. Like your wife, nobody says like, hey, it's time for you. He just goes in there and starts racking up plates, and he's doing like, he's doing like cleans and jerks, and he's like doing walks, and he's swinging kettlebells. It's like, he's just doing this on his own, man. He's just like, he's got so disciplined now. He's doing it. And then he's like pulling a sled, you got like your youngest kid just like pulling a sled on his own. And at dinner, cause I've hung out with you a lot at your house, and I've seen your boys, and they eat with us, man. They eat the organs with us. They eat the meat with us. And I mean, Stryker loves his sweet potatoes. He loves his carbs, but they eat that stuff. They eat the meat first. They know they have to eat that stuff first. Like they're into it, and they're clearly benefiting. It's so cool to see them, really coming into their own and thriving. And it's cool to hear Rad like the blood, or because you said Rad asked for seconds on the blood.
Many times he's asked for seconds. He's asked for thirds. And what we do is far more important than what we say, right? What we model is exponentially important than what we say and what we teach. And so, sometimes the kids will do a workout and they'll say, oh, this was tough. Do I really got to work out again? Or eating this, didn't really taste really good. Do I need to have this again? And these are early conversations that we have. Our kids understand the value of earning stuff now. And you don't have to enjoy everything you do in life. If you enjoy everything you do in life, everything becomes flat, right? You need to pay a price and you need to earn it. And when you understand the benefits on the other side of that, man, everything is better. Everything tastes better. Everything smells better. Everything is better because you just got better, because you paid that price. And being able to talk to them about that, being able to shape that, and then being able to see them take their own initiative and go do these things, go pay that price on their own. Nobody has to tell my guys to work out. Every once in a while it might be Christmas and my guys say, it's Christmas. Do I have to work out today? And I say, you don't have to. You don't have to. And then normally the next question is, do we still get paid? Do we still get paid? And of course, the answer is, of course you don't get paid, but I bribe them to, right? And they get $1 per workout. And if they complete all the workouts for the month and they've done their chores, I double that money. And so they get paid a decent amount of money. And so if they miss one workout, let's say it's the 20th day of the month, then it starts over at 0. And so they might not be feeling it that day, but they know the principle behind it. This is not supposed to be fun. And we always talk about this. And I love when I say, Rad, why do you work out? And he'll tell me why. And he'll say, and I said, do you enjoy it? And he goes, it's not called funning out. It's called working out, right? It's not supposed, and I love that they can say this stuff. And so I'm glad that you can testify to this. You see them do it. They take the initiative, they go out and they do it, and they live a better life because of it. Imagine how much greater it feels when you've worked out that hard and now you're going to go relax. You know what it feels like to relax. What about everyone else who's been relaxing? They never worked for it and they're just relaxing, right? There's no juxtaposition. Right? They've just been relaxing and lazy their whole life. And I talk about this on the stories usually on Thursday. You're going to suffer one way or another, right? You can actively suffer and say you're going to pursue growth. You can work out, you can work hard, you can earn it, or you're going to passively suffer because your life sucks, because you never knew the peaks and the troughs. So one way or another, you're going to suffer. Why not suffer in a way that's going to create a permanently better life? Go earn that shit. And so to see them do that is a valuable thing. I want to see more people do that. And this is why really I'm on social media now, is because the world needs to hear this message.
Didn't Stryker just do a Barbarian?
That's right. Stryker did a full Barbarian, and everybody thought we were crazy. That our 15-year-old guy when he turned 15, it was like, this is your time. You're a rite of passage to do Barbarian. And I remember the look on his face, and he did not have the confidence. And I remember one of his CrossFit coaches said, I don't think he should do this. Maybe you should do something. It was already set in my mind. He's 15. He's going to make this happen, whatever it takes to make this happen. And we went to Miami just for like a week vacation. And I said, what are you going to do? How are you going to train Barbarian in Miami? He wasn't real sure. And I said, figure out what you're going to do. So he had a backpack. He had all of his weights in his backpack. And anywhere he went, he wore that backpack. When he went through the airport and they checked the bag, they're like, what is this kid doing with all these weights in the bag? And he says, I'm training for Barbarian. We're going on a casual after dinner walk. And he has like a 40-pound bag on. He's training Barbarian. And so, if you put in the work every day, when it comes time for the real thing, you're going to crush it. Yeah, so Stryker, it was a special moment. He did the entire Barbarian, and then we went on a sacred hunt, and this was his rite of passage into becoming a man. When I say becoming a man, it's when you do these things in life, you take real ownership and agency and responsibility over the life that you create. You realize the hard work that shapes that. He realized how hard he had to work to do something he didn't know was even possible, which was Barbarian. Same thing with a hunt. He didn't know that he could do this, right? And after several days out there hunting, and he did it. Imagine the sort of confidence that your guys get when they experience these milestones in life.
There's nothing like it, dude. I mean, I'm still getting them. I'm out surfing. I was just thinking about it the other day. Like, I'm out surfing, and the most meaningful days are when it's bigger and scarier and I can actually surf it, or I'm into this wave and I'm like, holy shit, I can do this. I'm 44 too, man. I'm the same age as you. And here I am still doing this. But, I think I really will honestly say that I think your boys are super lucky to have you as a dad, and all of the lessons you're teaching them are so valuable. And anyway, yeah, I think that it's incredible the way that you're raising them. So when I first met you, must have been 4 or 5 years ago at Paleo FX, right? I met your guys from Ancestral Supplements, and you all had business cards. And I remember getting this business card from you 4 or 5 years ago. And it says wood business card, and it says Liver King, Brian Johnson, Liver King. But you didn't get on social media till like last year. So talk to me about the genesis of Liver King. Like, in your mind, you've always been, a Liver King, or liked this name, but something, what changed in the last year? And we've kind of covered this a little bit. Like, what changed in the last year that made you want to go on social media? Because, I remember having conversations with you in the past where you were just interested in spreading the message in other ways. And you didn't really want or necessarily desire to be, millions of followers on it. You are one of the least ego-driven humans I've ever met. I don't think you wanted notoriety. You wanted to spread the message. And so it's incredible how many people have benefited now from your transition to social media. But I think at times you weren't even sure that you wanted to do that.
First, I just want to say I'm so glad you remember the business card, because I say how you do anything is how you do everything. So do it at the highest level. And the fact that you remember the business card, that thick piece of wood, and every business card costs like $1, right? So then you got to be real cognizant. Is it worth giving my card to this person? Because it costs $1. And so I think that's what you should do. How many business cards do you throw away? How many times does somebody just, you don't even think, it's mindless, take my business card? So the fact that you remember that, I appreciate that. You're right. I've never had a social media account. In fact, I was kind of against it. I could see how people would be attached to their phone, and I would call it anti-social media. And so I'm 44 years old, and I don't have maybe 43 at the time. I don't have any social media accounts. I don't know much about it. All I know is I see how people act on it, and I was against it. And my vision has always been the same. It's, how do we take the ancestral message mainstream? Because what people are doing today isn't working. Most people's lives suck. Most people go to a job that they don't like. They return home to a life they don't love. Right? They get on Netflix, and then they take medication to feel better and to get hard, and their lives suck. So what's happening today isn't working. And I know that because hundreds of thousands have communicated this over time, and they want help. People are looking for a solution to a better life. And so if we have access and we know that it's a simple, elegant solution, this ancestral living thing, and we can take this thing mainstream, I've always thought, how do I develop weapons so that we can get this message out? I did not want to go on social media. And I think a few people, chiefly probably you, was like, you need to go on social media. And this is the revelation that I had. I don't want to go on social media. I have to go on social media. And so 6-7 months ago, I said, let's give this a shot. Let's try this thing out. Let's not change anything. We're going to continue to model, teach, and preach the way that I live. And so the Liver King was really born in, 2012 or something like that. And I jokingly say that some guy in New York City said, oh, hey, you're Brian Johnson. And I'm thinking, oh my God, who's Brian Johnson, right? And I said, do you know what happened to Brian Johnson? Do you know that everybody has this barbarian inside of them? They're trapped in this cage. My barbarian was called Liver King. He broke out of this cage and he fucking ate Brian Johnson. He ate Brian Johnson, and now it's the Liver King. And what that's really all about, it's Liver King because, first of all, liver is king, right? If there's one thing you're going to do, I'm not going to tell you online ancestral tenets. People want to know what to do. If I tell you online, you don't remember anything. I say eat liver because liver is king. And if you can let liver into your life, you're going to start living a better life. You're going to start living a primal life. And you're going to realize that you can express a higher and a more dominant form, and you can become anything, even a king. So it's Liver King for that reason, because liver is king. And if you live this way, you can express your highest and most dominant form and you can become a king. And so I said, let's try this. Let's get on social media and let's try this. And I remember telling everyone around me, we'll try this for like 3 or 6 months. And if I hate it, I'll just go back to doing what I was doing. But you know what? I will admit, initially, I hated it. I hated it because it stretched me in such new ways, which probably meant it was the best thing for me. And I'll tell you, probably after around 6 or 8 weeks, I started loving it. I started getting feedback from people that were almost crying, that would tell me that they lost 80 pounds, they stopped drinking alcohol, they've found a confidence in life, and they've reconnected with the outside world. And when you hear stuff like that, you can hear me maybe repeat this, but I think you're a piece of shit person if you know that you have the ability to spread that message and create that kind of change in the world, and you're not going to go on social media. Again, this is not something I ever said I wanted to do. This is something that I think people like you encouraged me to do and told me I had to do it. And so now I've been doing it. And the whole goal is to amplify this message. And if we can make sure we bring this message to the masses, if we can go mainstream with this message, then this is what it's all about. And so we can help people learn this message. It's something that costs virtually nothing, that's accessible to everybody. And now everybody can express their highest and most dominant form. This is what we need to do. Yeah, so that's sort of the story about social media. And now here we are.
Here we are, man. I'm really freaking glad you did it because it's amazing. I mean, it's been really inspirational and incredible to see what you've accomplished. And no doubt, you know this, but I mean, at this point, millions of people have benefited from what you've done. Millions. That's insane, man. Like, I'm really glad. It's incredible. And I just feel a little bit of pride knowing that I knew you before social media. I knew that guy when he was playing in the coffee shop and he was just this little undiscovered band. He had all this talent and he was out there doing Barbarian and busting his fucking balls and nobody knew about it and nobody saw his stories. And he was eating, we were eating testicle and liver together and nobody knew. Right. And now it's like the whole fucking world knows, man. And I just feel pretty kind of, I feel like a cool kid knowing you before you exploded. But I think the best part is the fact that so many people have benefited from this. I thought it would also be really cool to tell people a little bit of the heart and soil story on this podcast, because that kind of wraps into the way you and I have known each other. Like I said, we met at Paleo FX 4 years ago. And I'll never forget the dinner that we had there. In addition to the business card, we all ate tomahawks and organs. And I mean, what a friendship we've had, dude. Like so many cool things we've done, so much time on the lake and swimming and adventures and just sharing ideas and conversations. And, I'll let you tell the story, but I think it's important for people to understand, the heart and soil brotherhood that we have and where it came from.
I remember this like yesterday. I remember you calling and I remember taking the phone call and I remember the way you said it. You told me that you're going to start a company. You're going to lift a company you're going to start a company that's a supplement company. And I'm like, oh, okay, tell me more. And you're like, well, it's going to be a nose to tail glandular company. And we might be competitors. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And I know you didn't know what I was thinking, but I'm thinking this might be the biggest opportunity of my life, right? Because again, my goal here is to get this message out, to take the ancestral message mainstream. And people perceive competition, I think in the smallest sense of the word. Here's the deal, 99% of the world, they don't know the value of eating nose to tail. They don't know the ancestral message, right? So I'm thinking we're never going to be competitors. Like we're going to be allies. We're going to go shoulder to shoulder spreading this message. And I'm thinking, I need you. I need Paul Saladino, the Carnivore MD, because you knew this years ago. I had asked you, I found your podcast and I said, hey man, let's spread this message together. You're the best in the world at this. And I'm thinking, you're the greatest orator of all time. The way that you talk about the science, the way that you're entertaining with it, the way that you know everything about all the peptides and food is information, right? The way that we mechanically load, we get sun, all the tenets is some sort of cell signaling, some sort of info, and you know how to talk about all that stuff. And I'm like, I need you. And so when you told me you were starting this company, I said, man, give me just 24 hours. Give me just 24 hours because I might have an opportunity that you might be interested in. So I remember walking with Liver Queen that night. It's getting dark out and I tell her about this whole thing. And I say, I think I'll regret this for the rest of my life if I don't recruit Paul to go into this business together. Let's do this thing together. because I need you a whole lot more than you needed me. And I just remember pitching you on it, and you were like, and I thought I was going to have to like hardcore pitch you on it. And you embraced me, and you're like, tell me some more details. And I said, here's the thing, ancestral supplements will all be run with Liver King philosophy, and Heart and Soil will all be run with Carnivore MD philosophy. And I love the way that you wanted to make sure to produce products that were condition based. And your philosophy is so different. The way that you've always talked about the carnivore philosophy has always been different than the way that we've talked about the ancestral philosophy. So I said, what a great way to not share the same philosophy and to spread the message in the world. And now here we are today.
It's so cool. I mean, it's been the best decision that I've ever made in my life. And I remember you and I have had these conversations, and there's nobody that I'd rather go to war with than you, man. And so I really feel like we've had that conversation, and we've talked about the fact that this is in some ways a war. That's painting it a little negatively, but we know that this is a war for hearts and souls, and it's a war for minds, and it's a war for people to kind of help them wake up from the way that we've been conditioned and placed in cages. And it's been an incredible journey with you. And I love that philosophy. And I loved that when you elaborated that to me years ago. And I thought, I don't want to compete with the ancestral supplements. I love what you're doing there. But I do think that it would be amazing to get to do something with my own ideas and to build a company based around my ideas. And so you clarified it so beautifully that night when we talked, and the next day. And it was just like, hey, look, 99% of the world needs to hear about this message. And if they find them through Liver King, or they find them through Carnivore MD, they're still finding the message, and they're still finding what we both believe, and we pretty much, strongly know are the best desiccated organ supplements in the world, source the best, all the quality controls. And so we just want people to get organs. And you and I both agree that, like, we want people to get fresh organs first. But listen, if you're not going to eat a heart or a liver or a testicle or a spleen or a brain, you should get that from somewhere. And the desiccated organs serve a real purpose there. And it's been an incredible journey. And so, Ancestral Supplements, Heart and Soil, these are brother companies, and they're both with this exact same mission. And, they're probably approaching it a little differently and reaching different audiences, but I think it's awesome to share that with people, because I don't think a lot of people really know about that. It's mostly me on the Heart and Soil website when it should be me and you, but I think that you've always been a wonderful mentor.
Like you said earlier, I never wanted anybody to know who this guy was.
Right.
It was, I'm really good at building teams. I'm good at building businesses. I know how to spread this message. It was never, I wanted to get out in front of the camera. I didn't want to get out in front of the camera. And, one thing that I love is when we were in Times Square and we were doing a push-up competition with all these badass primals, there was a gentleman behind me. And after the push-up competition, we're eating raw liver. How cool is this? We're doing push-ups, we're earning it. And now we're eating bone marrow and raw liver. And I give this one primal a chance to grab a piece of raw liver, and he shakes his head. He shakes his head like that. But the coolest thing is then he brought out a bottle of desiccated liver. And so this is to your point, right? Like, we want people to go out and learn how to hunt and have that kind of connection with the animal. Go to your local butcher, find a source where you can eat the real deal. But if you can't do that, you need this kind of nourishment. And when you get this kind of nourishment in you, Katie bar the door, because then you start to figure out what your potential is and you can move on. But everybody needs access to this. And there's so many people like the gentleman next to me who don't want to eat the real deal. And that's fine. That's fine, because you're going to get a whole lot of benefit from one of our supplements.
I mean, I heard it, today, like I said, I just came from the animal-based gathering. There's 100 people here in Costa Rica, and I heard the stories, and it's so cool, man. Like you said, I feel like I'd be a piece of shit too if I knew what I know now and didn't talk about it. If I, coming from my medical background, knew that you could see people with 100-pound weight loss, off depression meds, much better mood-wise, resolving eczema, resolving psoriasis, resolving all these things, autoimmune conditions, incredible, all sorts of addictions and psychiatric illnesses and autoimmunity. And it's just with diet. It's just dietary change, hearkening back to the way that our ancestors have always lived. And it's something I feel compelled, just like you, to freaking talk about, to scream from the rooftops. That's what this podcast is about. That's what my social media is about. Fuck you, Instagram. Give me back my give me back my handle. So I can,
I love it when some of the critics say, isn't it just convenient that you sell supplements, that you want to go spread this message and you sell supplements? And I think it's hilarious because there's 9 ancestral tenets. One of them is eat. And under eat, we model, teach, and preach, go get the real deal, right? But then there's 8 other ancestral tenets that don't cost anything. We all have access to, and I would say I'm selling those, right? I don't make $1 off of you buying it, but I'm selling those because this is what I believe is going to enable us to express our highest form. And the other day, there was a vegan that interviewed me. And I said, well, I really hope that this article comes out unbiased, but let's just keep in mind that 8 of the 9 ancestral tenets are vegan friendly, right? Because irrespective of what you eat, again, I want to make sure that the world knows these ways. And so I just think it's an important thing that what we're selling is so much more than supplements. We're selling this connection to our past, the things that shaped our DNA to express the baddest mammalian predators that have ever lived. This is what we're teaching and preaching. And again, if you're not going to go and get this from the butcher, if you're not going to go and get on a hunt, there's a convenient way to get it. So this is an option. So yeah, I'm proud as hell about what we're doing. And when I hear critics say that, I'm like, you don't know shit about what we're doing then. Like, you've not heard us talk about sleep. You've not heard us talk about how you should move. You've not heard us talk about you don't know anything. You're picking and choosing what you want to talk about because we stand for so much more than that.
And those people probably haven't read the reviews because if you go to Ancestral Supplements or you go to heartandsoil.co and you look at what people are, the results they're having, the way they're benefiting from just including these desiccated organs, along with these philosophies, an animal-based diet, the 9 ancestral tenets that you're talking about, like, people are freaking changing their life, and so I think, well, I'm proud to be doing this. If the supplement that a company that we built and sell is a piece of that transformation, then so fucking be it, because that's the best money that people are ever going to spend. I think it's incredible. And if that little bit, I think this is such an interesting piece of human psychology. If you give someone something for free, they don't always value it, right? So if somebody spends a little bit of money on desiccated organs, they're thinking, oh man, I feel this, like I feel a little different. And that might just be the little bit of commitment, that little bit of nudge they need. That's always been my hope, that the organ complex, the supplements, the desiccated organs would be that little kick that they need to think, I can take this pill. It's going to cost me a little money. I'm going to have to invest something in it. I'm going to have to actually, use a little bit of my energy, my worked hard for money to get this. And they feel something and they think, whoa, there's something to this, because people do feel it with the organs. They're so nutrient rich. And then the ball starts rolling. Then the snowball gathers steam and they think, maybe there's more to this ancestral movement. Maybe I should ground. Maybe I should get in the sun. Maybe I should sleep differently. Maybe I should eat more of meat in general. Maybe I should get some fresh organs. Maybe I should cut out some leaves and stems and roots and seeds that our ancestors don't really celebrate. Maybe I should get some raw, local, organic honey. And then they're really rolling. It's that first entryway. And I think the way it's positioned just helps so many people. It's an incredible thing that we're doing, man. And, there's always going to be haters. Let them hate.
I always say haters are our people too, right? And they probably are the ones that need the most love, the most liver, the most bone marrow. So whenever I see people hating, I'm like, you got to remember, these people are probably hurting the most. These people are suffering the most. These people are the reason why we're here the most. These people need the most love. So let's give these guys some liver and bone marrow. Yeah. So I think we need these people too, and if you just remember, like, they're probably hurting the most, it kind of changes everything.
It's completely frame shifting it. And I think that I feel the same way. Like, let's get that guy a steak, or let's get that guy some liver, and then we'll see what happens. He'll probably feel a lot better and be a little less cranky. I love that you talked about New York. I want to hear about that experience because it looks so cool. So I saw you doing a Barbarian across the Brooklyn Bridge.
It was so hard because I love Barbarian. I do Barbarian training, if not the full Barbarian, every Saturday, super Barbarian training. And I'm thinking, oh, what's the big deal? It's just a mile across the bridge. Anybody who actually knows, if you go from Manhattan to Brooklyn, you're going uphill 80% of the time. And I'm thinking, oh, it's a bridge, right? I'm thinking, I don't know if this is physics or whatever, but like, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going 50% of the time. Bro, I don't know how Manhattan is so much lower or how they did this, but it's 80% of the time you're going up. And afterwards, I said to the crew that figured out the logistics, I said, why the hell did we go from the city to Brooklyn? And they thought I was pissed. And you could see the look on their face. And I said, I'll tell you why, because a fucking king chooses to do the hard shit. Because what kind of piece of shit would say, let's do the easier route, right? And so I appreciate, if it was lack of planning or whatever it was an incredible thing to do. The main goal really is, I can't tell you how many DMs I get that are, hey, how do you do it in the big city? Must be nice you live out in the woods. Must be nice that you can go outside and you can just walk in your bare feet, connect with the sun. You live on a ranch. You can get your animals. You name it. Excuse, excuse, excuse. And the reason why I know that those are excuses because I get an equal amount of DMs from badass primals that live in the city that tell me how they do it. And so I said, okay, it obviously can be done. And of course, we're no excuse kind of guys. So I said, let's go to the big city. Let's show people how we can get it done. And it's a walk in the park. You can get it done anywhere. You know, at the end of the day, the motto kind of was no excuses. You know, I connected everywhere I went. I can't tell you how many trees are coming up from the earth. And there's this one video that I did, and it was like, this tree is connected to the earth. So now if you connect to this tree, you can connect to the earth. And some primals are like, oh, well, you know, the sidewalk is connected to the earth. And it doesn't really work like that with polymers and other things, right? That can interrupt that conductivity. But there's so many places where trees are connected to the earth. And if you don't want to take off your fancy shoes, you can still put your hand on a tree. There's so much access to sun. There's butcher shops everywhere. I'm telling you, there's butcher shops everywhere. And if you don't want to use a butcher shop, you can still call or place an order with White Oak Pasture, right? You have access to the whole animal. I had a whole lamb when I was there. I had, the thing is, all you have to do is get a little bit creative, a little bit inventive, right? And so my goal was to show that this is effortless. You can go to the big city or you can be in the woods, and it's the same kind of effort. We need to stop making excuses. Because if you're on the subway, I did a whole workout on the subway. Did I get a lot of weird looks? Yeah, I did get, like, what are you doing? And I tell you, I'm working out is what I'm doing. So if you can say, I don't give a shit as much about what you think about me because I care about what I think about me, then you can get to work. I can't tell you how many people were waiting for a subway. I can tell you 100% of them were looking at their phone. And so this is a reason why I don't even carry a phone. It's because I don't ever want to look like that. What I did is I dropped and I started doing push-ups. I found a place where I could do pull-ups. I started doing handstand push-ups. I started doing handstand walks. And a lot of this is calisthenics, but I also put kettlebells in my bags. So then I brought out a kettlebell. There's so many times people are waiting. Go get some work. Get to work. And these are some of the biggest things, the biggest levers, I think, are the first three tenets: sleep, eat, and move, right? Then it's shield, connect. It's sleep, eat, move, shield, connect, cold, sun, fight, and bond. But these first three, you can easily pull these levers anywhere you are. I worked out all over the city. I don't know how many barbarians I did. I did a lot of barbarians. I'm not telling everyone to carry those weights around, but put some weight in a backpack. Be inventive. You can do pull-ups and push-ups anywhere. And so this is what I wanted to show. And I got a lot of support when we were there. It was incredible how many people were like, Liver King. And I've not been out and about like this in a while. So when people said that, I'm like, yeah, it is Liver King. Why is it Liver King? And almost everybody, not everybody, maybe 70% of people yelled back, because liver is king. Oh, can you imagine how gratifying that was? So this was really the reason for the trip, was to show that you can effortlessly practice all 9 ancestral tenets wherever you are, make no excuses, get it done, and earn it.
I love that, because people listening to this anywhere can appreciate that message, can incorporate that message in their life, and there's no excuse. And I think, like you said, there's access to food pretty much everywhere in the US. Even in other countries, it's pretty easy to access food. Here in Costa Rica, I can get organs. I can get organs more easily here in Costa Rica than I can in the States. Get outside, eat right foods, eat an evolutionarily consistent diet, get in the sun, move, ground, spend time with people you care about. These are the things. And I love that we started off the podcast with your trip to Peru and Africa, because the way that I see it is that our ancestors, our predecessors have always done these things. They've been incorporated into their life. How did the Maasai not touch the ground? All you have to do is take off your shoes and walk into your hut, which is dirt floor. You're touching the ground. How do they not get in the sun? They don't even have anything indoors. They don't have a door. They don't have windows. How do they not spend time with their tribe? It's their life. They must spend time with their tribe. How do they not eat these foods? It's burned in their brains. They know these foods are at the center of what they do. So all these pieces, the 9 ancestral tenets, these key portions of optimal health, these key tenets of optimal health as well, they're pieces that are intrinsically human, but we've gotten away from them. I talk about we kind of live in this human zoo, and the cages are open. We've only to walk out. You can walk out of your human zoo, but we've imprisoned ourselves in these human zoos of comfort, but we're still really pretty primitive in the best sense of the word. We're very primal in our brains and in our ancestry and our DNA and our physiology. And when we try and disconnect from that, we just don't do well as humans. We see that over and over and over. So I love what you're doing, man. I love the message. And I think it's going to be so valuable for so many people. And I love that you could go to New York City and show that and walk across a freaking crosswalk in Times Square, pulling a sled. I was, oh my God. I can't imagine how many, what the logistics were for that, but yeah.
It was fun though.
Amazing. So, all right. I want to let you summarize this for people. I kind of put my bow on it there, but let's just bring it home for people. If you want to leave people with some thoughts, what would you leave them with, my man?
I think that the 9 ancestral tenets, of course, again, it's liver king because liver is king, right? And people ask me just to elaborate on the 9 ancestral tenets. I want to just talk about a couple of them because here's the deal. If you really want to express your highest and your most dominant form, you need to embrace the tenets because here's the thing. If you sleep like shit, and most people do, you're not going to optimize your hormones, right? If you move like shit and you don't lift heavy shit, you're not going to optimize your hormones. If you eat like shit, you're not going to optimize your hormones, right? If you shield like shit and keep your cell phone next to your dick and balls, if you wear petrochemical clothing, if you wear xenoestrogen-laden perfumes, you're not going to optimize the right hormones. You're probably optimizing or increasing your estrogen, but this is not good for testosterone or growth hormone, right? The ancestral man had a much more favorable hormone profile than a manicured man that lives today. Right. And there's research to validate this. Just 30, 40 years ago, we had double the testosterone. What do you think it was 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago? Right. So the 9 ancestral tenets are really a way that we can express our highest and most dominant form, live the best version of ourselves to optimize our hormones. So I always tell people, let's start with liver. Let liver into your life, again, because liver is king. Get started with that. As you feel better, learn what all 9 ancestral tenets are really about. It's going to allow you to create a life and shape a life that you goddamn love, that's worth living, so much so that when this changes you and puts you on a new trajectory, you're going to feel like a piece of shit to not go tell everyone that you know about it. You're now that person next to us, another true believer, another truth seeker that knows that you got to touch someone else's life because it's not good enough to just live your best life, because it's about sharing these things, right? Creating a better life that we can all live in together. So this is it. It's about going shoulder to shoulder with people. It's about making sure that people know that the 9 ancestral tenets is what I believe is the best way to create the life that you want to live in so that you can become a king. So this is where I say we start with liver and then learn about the other 9 ancestral tenets. This is how you live your highest and your most dominant form.
I love it, brother. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. It's been great hanging out with you.
Oh, yeah. And I got to say it, Liver King out.
Liver King out. Carnivore MD out. Although I'm copying you there.